What it is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Third Intermission Podcast. This is your boy Dave, signing on this lovely summer evening. Of course, you can follow us on the socials at Toronto Third. Follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and on Instagram. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Apple, and our friends over at Podbean. And make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, and hit that bell because we be hitting you with new videos every week. We got the usual suspects in the building here. Of course, we got the right hand of the king, a.k.a. the Fedora Man, a.k.a. Mr. Stereo Girl, Avery Lewis McDougall IV, out in these streets. Avery, what's going on in Edmonton right now?
Yo, listen here. We staying hot. We staying ready. Yo, the heat's here. The rain's gone finally. Yo, you out here with these jokes, these comebacks, eh? Listen here. All four of your eyes are hating, Dave.
Listen, all four of your eyes have been hating the second you got on here, alright? Don't start with me. Don't start with me, alright? Out here looking like a failed Canadian Idol singer. Like,
What? Alright, you look like Jalen Weston's black grandson.
listen, you look like Charlie Murphy's adopted nephew, alright? Calm down. Anyways, we also have the Hood Father in the building. Of course, we're going to refer to him as Arnie Pie and Arnie in the Sky right now. How's traffic looking, Arnie?
Well, traffic is backed up as usual. Lots of stupidity out on the roads today. But other than that, traffic is good. Just stay off your phone while you're driving, put your drink down, pay attention to the road, and if the rain starts falling, don't be an idiot. Just keep driving normally like how you usually are.
All right, fair enough.
Hi, and fantastic. I'm just closing up here at work. Just facing up some stuff quickly before I walk out the door for the evening and have to be back here in like, give or take, 11 hours, I think, if I'm doing the math right. But, yeah, I'm good. I'm just trying to keep track of everything that's happening on and off the ice. How about you? What's happening with you, Dave?
So I am at home recovering from a back injury that I sustained at my job. I've been going stir crazy for the last 2 weeks, regretting the fact that I can't go enjoy myself and go watch, or go to FanFest in Toronto, and go watch soccer games in Toronto and try and meet people from around the world because everybody from around the world has either disappeared or have gone back home. And now, of course, with people trying to shoot up the place, like it's basically you going into the club in 2001 and no metal detectors going off, and next thing you know, like two dudes who apparently are trying to beef with each other, shooting up everything. It's just like, you know what? I can't go out and have fun anymore, so I'm gonna keep my black ass on the couch. Anyways, just chilling at home, catching up on the World Cup and catching up on hockey stuff. So, yeah, I'm enjoying the good portion of my summer right now. Before we get started, we do want to address this real quick. Obviously, if you've been under a rock over the last couple of weeks, we've noticed that a number of radio stations have kind of been cut off. Three significant ones include Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver, a major radio station in Calgary that was also Rogers owned, and another that's near and dear to my heart, City News 570 out here in Kitchener. These were 3 of 6 radio stations that were shut down by Rogers as of last week. Of course, to NHL fans in the Calgary region and of course the Vancouver region, there is now significantly no radio play for Canucks games and Flames games as of this moment, and it's kind of devastating to the whole situation of, say if fans don't happen to have digital cable or say any access to television, it creates a little bit of a difficult situation for them to be able to follow their team. And it really sucks for Flames and Canucks fans. More particularly, it also just it's heavily heartbreaking for Rangers fans. The Rangers, of course, just coming off the Memorial Cup championship. They've lost a very significant lifeline out here in Kitchener. The Rangers, of course, are trying to scramble to see if they can find another radio station that can cover their games. Of course, Rogers has stated that, quote unquote, due to rising costs and of course loss of listenership, they felt that it was easy for them, or quote unquote difficult for them, to cut off radio stations that were essential to not only sports coverage within Canada, but also just vital lifelines for communities such as like Kitchener, Ontario, for example. Of course, lack of news, lack of traffic, lack of weather updates, it really creates a very difficult situation. And we obviously want to give our condolences and of course our support out to those who ended up losing their jobs in that situation. Hopefully all these folks can bounce back. Like I said, we're hoping that the Rangers can find another broadcaster for OHL games for the season. We're also hoping that even though we do make fun of the Flames and the Canucks, we hope that, both teams find, a suitable replacement for radio coverage for their games so that fans in not only the BC region, but also in the Alberta region can get covered. So at least that way, Flames fans across the country and maybe in the United States as well can also have, that lifeline as well. Avery, I know you've been covering this for a very long time. I want to get your thoughts on this whole situation before we process the show tonight.
Honestly, it's tiring. Again and again and again, you hear every few months more layoffs, more stations being shut down, more staff being laid off. And it's tough because, again, you've got over 200 people who are now out of work, be it technical staff, on-air people, reporters, people who've been on these stations for only a few months to a few years to decades, who now have to look and adjust. And radio is important. Radio is a medium that, yes, it isn't what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, but radio is important for the connections to these communities, especially local radio. I mean that for local radio, connection to markets like Kitchener, like Calgary, like Vancouver. Everything can't emit out of one or two cities in this country. That connection with teams talent you can hear every day. You can meet, you can see, they're part of your fabric in your city. We're losing that once again. It's a shame because I don't know if we're going to get back to that in ways it once was, but I mean, here's opportunity now for, yes, more independent stations to pop up, more podcasts, more talent-owned entities. But it still sucks that we're losing at the current time more ways to have content that's uniquely a part of our fabric, of our different communities like in this country, Dave.
Sorry, folks, I was muted for a minute. It really hurts to see things like this, and yes, I fully agree with what you're saying. It's been nothing more than a constant and consistent problem in Canadian media. Of course, most of, if not significantly 90% of what Rogers is focusing on is, of course, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, as they now have 100% full ownership of the company as of July the 6th. And it's showing that, for fans across the country outside of the greater Toronto area, that, Rogers is more focused on, upholding, national broadcast rights for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then, of course, the other Toronto teams, the Raptors, the Blue Jays, Toronto FC, and to a lesser extent, the Toronto Argonauts, who are currently trying to, maintain relevance across across the province of Ontario. There's been a lot of social media backlash regarding the situation. Of course, I really can't quantify whether or not it's going to cause some dents. But what I will say is that, a lot of fans are very upset regarding this, especially within Western Canada and, of course, regions outside of the Toronto and surrounding area. But of course, within the GTHA in Southern Ontario, it's like if this is going to be affected this way, then who's to say like other stations in Toronto might be next. Of course, TSN 1040, we don't know if that's still standing. That should still be standing, correct? Or that's long gone now.
It's 1040. That was not around. It's 1040 still going.
Yeah. Of course, there was AM 640, the home of the Leafs, like back when we were growing up. I don't know if that's still standing as well. But like AM radio, as much as it's a dying art form, like it's still needed, especially if say something significant were to happen within the province of Ontario or say across the country, and there's no how do I put this? There's no coverage for say emergency backups or anything, especially when there's no access to phones or say internet, right? Say heaven forbid if a nuclear strike happens and it happens to be in one of Canada's four biggest cities, Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, or even Edmonton, for example, right? And there's no AM coverage in case there's no AM radio coverage in case something like that happens. That really creates a really negative situation. I know it's an extreme, but it's something you really need to think about. And trying to eliminate that medium really doesn't help. But I'm kind of just going off here. Troy, I do want to hear your thoughts real quick before we go on with the rest of the show.
Well, it is certainly very disappointing that corporate greed decided it was better than having people's voices heard. With Rogers basically owning everything, it makes it that much harder for people to have their voices heard and to get their news and information in their sports. I think they're doing a tremendous disservice to the communities that were served by the radio stations that were cut. I think maybe somewhere in the long, and hopefully short term rather than long term, that they will revisit this and get this back together. Because while some might think radio is a dying art form, people still it's still something that people access, still something that people listen to, because they might not be next to TV, or they might not have a streaming subscription, which is basically what everything has come down to now these days. It forces people to search for their news and information elsewhere, and that, with so much distrust all over the internet, you're not really going to know anymore what's a trusted source from what isn't. And I think with the reporters who were doing a hell of a job in Calgary and Vancouver, I think those were more trusted sources than Jim Bob 927791778 on Twitter or something like that, right? You're not really going to believe a guy with a bunch of numbers as a username as opposed to people who are actually around the game. It is terribly unfortunate that this is happening. I'm going to blame the CRTC for this. Because how do you allow essentially I know there's three, TELUS, Rogers, and Bell. But it's essentially Rogers and Bell that controls almost everything. From sports to media to whatever you consume. Everything's got to run through them. Why? We're a big enough country. Why can't we share? People are always saying Canadians are nice and polite. But when it comes to business dealings, not so much. I want to know why that is.
I completely understand where you're coming from with this. Folks, if you are listening to this, go cuss off your MP and tell them like, yo, listen, as much as I don't listen to the radio, my grandfather listens to it in case, say something happens. If my region doesn't have it and say, you know, something kind of pops off, it's like, y'all did this, so either do something about it or don't do something about it, but two twos do something about it. Yeah, anyways. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. Of course, wanted to address that really quickly before we got started. First things first, we do want to address the whole foolishness with the Stanley Cup. Of course, Carolina Hurricanes owner putting his family on the Stanley Cup as opposed to an equipment manager that has been with the team for 20 years. That's creating a whole mess of a situation. The schedule is dropping later this week, so hopefully by the time this episode pops up, we'll find out which team's coming to your city and how many times the Ottawa Senators are going to lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs come the 26-27 season. And then, of course, last but not least, the other major storyline that we're dealing with right now is that the Ducks matching Leon Karlsson's offer sheet with the Flyers, and we're trying to figure out who's having a worse summer than, you know, NHL legend Pat Verbeek. But let's dive right in real quick. Big storyline coming out of the NHL as it stands. Owner Tom Dundon was slammed for engraving his kids' names on the Stanley Cup, including his 7-year-old niece. Now, of course, it's not uncommon for the owner of a hockey team to just, you know, throw his family members on there like it's nobody's business. But in order to do that, you kind of have to bump a few people off. And I have to say this right now. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It wasn't his niece. It was his kids. The fact that, you know, you're throwing your kids on there and you're kind of just throwing away the idea of, like, say, putting an equipment manager on there, or, like, say, somebody who's a front office member, having them basically thrown off the cup and essentially just, you know, creating a little bit of nepotism in that situation. That kind of creates a little bit of controversy in that situation. Like, again, if let's say, for example, I happen to own, I don't know, the San Jose Sharks, and, you know, I put my team on there, and it's like, you know, every employee that's gotten us there, the equipment manager, the guy who basically sharpens my skates, you know, the laundry attendant who washes the jerseys and everything. If I'm basically leaving them off the cup, which they have contributed to basically a stellar cup run, and I'm putting, like, say, I don't know, some girl I met on OnlyFans, like, literally 2 weeks prior, on the Stanley Cup. Like, that's one of the most messed up things you can do. Because, like, I'll look like an idiot because it's like, oh, let me just dash some 25-year-old on the Stanley Cup who I'm basically paying with my own money just to basically show their bits on the internet. Instead of, say, someone who's been working for the team for 20 years. You know, that's kind of, I mean, again, it creates a very negative connotation considering the situation. But that's what we're dealing with here. And I kind of find it mind-boggling. Avery, obviously, I know you have been following, obviously you've been around the block a little bit here. What's the hockey world saying about this really quickly?
Well, there's a few takes on this. First of all, you mentioned how in the past, owners have put their kid names on the cup, which is true, but those family members, those kids worked for the organization. They were also team employees. So yeah, that was fine to do. You could do that. But my thing is too is that what's going around, people are feeling is that people are saying, how does Hockey Hall of Fame and NHL not vet every single off-ice name that goes on the cup? How are you as a Hall of Fame and NHL not asking Tom Dundon and Hurricanes? Who's this? Who's that? Who's this? Who's that? How are you not asking the team who every single person is you're submitting that is not a player? That blows me away. That should be overseen by people from both the Hall of Fame and the NHL to make sure you don't have an owner putting all these kids on the cup who don't have a connection to the franchise. How are you not check that? How are you not vetting that as a league? How?
Troy, would you like to add?
I would. So I wasn't aware that there was more than one team who has put family members on the Stanley Cup. My understanding is that the other, I don't remember what the team was, but my understanding is the team who did it, they actually put, like Avery was saying, they actually put people who contributed to the team in some manner. Whether you were like the president or somebody, like you were actually there. You had a role within the team. You're not just a guy who just happens to own it and writes the paycheck. Like you actually did something to contribute to the success of your team. I've seen varying views from former NHL players like Aaron Ward and Ray Ferraro. They vehemently disagree with having family members who do not contribute to team success being engraved in the cup. They're also confused as to why a kindergartner who won't even down the line. Like why is his name on? Who doesn't seem to have a problem? Like but I'm still on here because I contributed. But I think he kind of understands the kindergarten argument. But for me, I think much like the former NHL players do, if you don't have a specific role within that team structure that contributes to the success of your team, you shouldn't be on it. Because there's only so many names on this trophy. So imagine having your name erased off the top for a 7-year-old who probably won't even play hockey or get his name engraved on it legitimately like everybody else who puts off family, who spends long nights on the road, broken bones, torn limbs, muscles, all that fun stuff that comes with being a pro hockey player. Those guys are putting in the work. I would be pissed off too.
I wouldn't have said it better myself. I mean, again, like, you have a significantly small number of names, and it's just like that you can put on the cup, and essentially you're giving it to your kids who are under the age of 18 and have not worked with the team. Like, that's kind of suspect at this point, and I wouldn't put up with that if I were the NHL in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But again, I think going forward, I think in this particular situation, nobody really did their due diligence. And going forward, I feel as if somebody has to do their job and say, oh, hey, maybe we should vet the names of who we're putting on the cup at this point. Because that essentially just tells not only, say, fans outside the team, but fans around the hockey world that, oh, these owners just really don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they're investing in. And,
Well, we know that this league is run by children masquerading as old white men. There's never an adult in the room when the right decisions need to be made.
No, I don't agree with that.
For me, what I'm thinking, if the owner can get like all 30 members of his family engraved in the cup, I'm a player and be like, yo, where's my wife's name? Where's my son's name? Where's my daughter's name? Where's my dog's name? You got room for your kids? Where's mine? Well, we're at it. Some of them must have mistresses. Put them on the cup too. For putting everybody on it, put everybody on it.
Nope, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And it's just foolishness at this point. So it is what it is. And you know what? Good luck to the NHL on this. They can figure it out themselves. But yeah. I don't know if it's my Stanley Cup team, I'm making sure that the people who got me here, and that includes our employees, gets the job done. You know, and gets their name on the cup. I'm not putting my youth on the cup unless they actually work for the team. That being said, if somebody's out here trying to, you know, randomly throw me on the Stanley Cup just because, like, you know, I served some French fries to a hockey player one time, then like, yo, I'm down. But like, just saying. Anyways, let's move on here real quick. The NHL. Speaking of the NHL schedule is near completion and it's getting ready to drop this week. Are there any significant matchups that we're looking forward to in this situation? Avery, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun to see a few of these matchups. Two of them involve Ottawa. I want to see that first Ottawa Senators game when Alfie returns behind the Leafs bench. I want to see what the reaction is going to be like with him behind the Leafs bench in that first game.
Like, we were joking around about this, but like that Alfredson signing was legitimately like Hogan turning heel and joining the NWO. And it was literally 30 days to the day that happened. Like, I feel like Ottawa's been through enough, but like as a Leafs fan and you know, as a solid Senators hater, like this is just nothing but just delicious irony at this point. And
right.
like you love to see it, but at the same time it's like you kind of almost feel bad in that situation. You know what I mean?
I mean, what an off-season. I mean, yeah, for Ottawa, yeah, you bring back Claude Giroux, but you lose Alfredson and you lose Brady Tkachuk. I mean, although granted, I think most of the fans wanted Brady gone after the big games. They wanted Brady gone after what happened with the podcast and the big games. But still, what an off-season. And also, too, I want to see that first game when Florida plays in Ottawa. Woo-wee! Yo, that's going to be hostile. Let me tell you something.
Oh, trust me. I think the one game I'm looking forward to is McKenna versus Celebrini. I think that first Leafs versus Sharks game is going to be very significant. It's also going to be very interesting because, you know, number one and number two, of course. Let me rephrase that. Sorry. Number one a couple years ago, and then of course number one now. Just tearing it up. Of course, you have another number one in Austin Matthews. Like, that's just going to be just a whole microcosm of firepower, at least offensively, between the Leafs and the Sharks. And I really would love to see that. Also, there is another matchup I do want to see as well. I kind of want to see how well the Sharks do against Vegas when now, like, say, Brett Howden, Carter Hart, and Mitch Marner have the experience of being in a Stanley Cup final. And we kind of want to see how well they recover with things after losing the Stanley Cup final back in June. And also just seeing if they can defend not only their Pacific Division title, but also their Western Conference championship as the Sharks look to become the young up and coming team to lead themselves to the Stanley Cup final. Troy, I know you're just getting home, but like, say, how are you feeling about this? Or are there any games you're looking forward to?
Tampa, Florida, Florida, Ottawa, just because we know of the the fireworks that are going to happen there. I think really that's it, because those are really the only teams that carry any kind of drama, more or less. That we're all eager to see a sequel to, more or less. It'll be interesting, like the Ottawa, Florida, for obvious reasons. Brady Tkachuk, and then Florida, they reacquired Brad Kilgudas, so no matter where he goes, he's going to be public enemy number one. So there's that, and then just the rivalry within Tampa and Florida in itself, and especially because Florida has both Cybertruck brothers now. It's an even more reason for the Lightning fans to hate the Panthers. So we'll see how long it takes for there to be more stupidness happening afoot. But right now those are until the actual schedule comes out, those are really the only two matchups that pique my interest at the moment.
Fair enough. It is going to suck though that we aren't going to see any NHL games on Saturday nights on CBC anymore. Hopefully CBC does take over the P-Dub and puts them as, like, say, the perennial marquee, just hockey program for Hockey Night in Canada. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not looking forward to the season too much, only because of the fact that it's like Hockey Night in Canada was a staple. I mean, if you grew up in a shitty neighborhood in Toronto, or like you grew up in the ghetto and you only had like 30 channels on cable, especially Toronto cable, like CBC was the only decent channel you had, right? You had CBC and you had CSN. That's all you had, and you were only able to watch hockey games on CBC. If you were all about the French, you could watch them on CBLT, which was like, RDS. Is it not? No, it's not RDS. Radio Canada, which was like basically CBC French, and that's all you could see. I wasn't sure how you got that in Edmonton when you were growing up, Avery.
First of all, I want to say, Dave, there's going to be someone who will be listening to us and saying, yo, you have 30 channels? When I was a kid, I had only 3. You are privileged. Yo, someone's going to be checking you and us and saying you only have 30 channels. Someone's going to check your us on that. Because, they're going to say what a life you had to only have 30 TV channels. There's going to be someone there who's going to come in here and grow up and say they only had CTV, CBC, and maybe a Global.
Not even Global. It's like more like City News at that point, or City TV. Oh no, wait, City TV was just Toronto Direct at that point, at the time.
Well, it also depended on which region you lived in too, right? So either you had 3, you had 5, or you had like 11 channels.
Exactly.
Like 11 was where I grew up. 11 was CHCH.
Yes, that's still standing, by the way.
28 was Fox.
Yep.
29 was Music. 30 was CSN, but you had to like pay for like the premium cable to get CSN. Channel 5 was the TV Guide channel. 6 was CBC. 3 was Global. 8 was CTV. 9 was Omni News. 10 was Rogers. 12 was RDS. 13 was another French one. 14 was Omni 2, and then like 15, 16, 17 were like ABC, NBC, and CBS.
Yeah. Oh.
And one of them, I think 21 was the Weather Network. I think 19 was the Shopping Channel. And then depending on where you lived, 49 or 50 something was BET.
Yep. Like, I remember back in the day, like, Channel 20 was like the new VR, and then it became like CTV2, and then it's like some weird CTV channel out in Barrie, but like, that's pretty much what it is now. And then of course CFMT Toronto was like the old Omni channel. Nobody knew 11 was Vision TV. No, sorry. Wait, that's a lie. 10 was like Vision TV, where it was like nothing but religious programming left, right, and center. Same with 9, actually. But like, I don't know. Avery, what was cable like for you growing up one time?
Cable, so there's times where I didn't have cable, but I did also have cable at times. So you mentioned those channels for us out west. TSN is still today channel 20, Sportsnet 23, Teletoon 42, Family Channels 45, Much was 17. The score was 81 for us. The score was 81 for us in Alberta. And what's the other day saying is, they were horrified by these Western number, and out west. Like,
I mean, again, like I only experienced it for like 4 months when I was out in Alberta myself, so.
And for us, in certain parts of Alberta, like in Edmonton, when it comes to U.S. channels, we would get the feed from Spokane News. So we would get KHQ, in terms of the U.S. channels for NBC, Fox, whatever. We get
KHQ, what is that?
That's Spokane NBC.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and if you were in Calgary, you might get that and a mix of Seattle. You go Vancouver, you get more Vancouver. You get King 4 in Seattle. Yeah, Vancouver, Calgary would get Seattle news. Edmonton would get Spokane. So, like,
I suppose you wouldn't get like say Minnesota. No, sorry, not Minnesota. You'd get like say North Dakota or South Dakota news out from Alberta. That's crazy.
No, we got Spokane. So it's funny because before we move on to 10, it's funny because from that we would learn about Spokane events growing up. Like it's like the biggest 3-on-3 tournament in the world is called Hoop Fest. That's held in Spokane, Washington. So there'll be teams from Edmonton who played in that sometimes for basketball because they grew up watching TV, learning about Hoop Fest from getting Spokane news across the border.
That's crazy. That's crazy, man. I don't know, man. Like, Western Canada is just a different breed at this point, man. But in any event,
you guys remember?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Before we move on, do you guys remember? I don't know if you guys remember it all. When listening to the radio, because we were just talking about like the TV station and stuff like that. Did you guys ever play with the turn dial on your radio to get WBLK?
Yeah, I remember that because it was like 93.7 was the only radio station with like decent music that was coming up here, right? Because don't get it twisted. 94.5 Chum FM was the shit back in the day. Same with 1050 Chum when there were decent radio stations, and then of course when Flow came through, Flow 93.5 came through. Back in I think 2002, 2003. Right around
D98. Which one is older? D98 or Flow?
Well, I mean,
yeah, for the longest time we had nothing. So it was,
and the only time you could listen to some decent tracks from like Usher or say a little Jodeci at 10 o'clock at night when your parents are telling you go on out of your bed,
yeah, it was okay.
93.7 WBLK. That was the only black station that we could get up here. And folks, I know you can hear me about this because it's we all knew there was some white chocolate out there that was listening to WBLK back in the day, trying to imitate 50 Cent and Nelly and all of them back in the day. We all know this was happening. Because Tutu's if you're 16 years old, you're trying to catch a vibe with say some girl you met from a different high school. I don't know, an all-girls school in Toronto, for example, right? She comes over, she sneaks in, you sneak into her crib. The only station you're turning on is WBLK, trying to muffle the noise, knowing that her parents are upstairs somewhere or down the hall. And it's that's the only station that you were catching a vibe with.
For the youth that are listening, when people our age tell you that we had to sit by the stereo and wait for the DJ to stop talking so we could press record on the tape to make our mixtape, WBLK is the station we were talking about. They love to chat.
See, and That's how I know that you and again, it goes to how you and Troy and Dave are a little older than me, because when I was first exposed to a true hip hop station in Canada, it was more flow. When I first started going to Toronto more often, it was slow in the morning, listening, and y'all both know this, listening in the car with my dad, listening to Melanie and JJ in the morning. And that was the first real exposure to a Canadian hip hop station. Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, we had Mark Strong and Gemini.
I mean, hey, I know Mark Strong first from NBA XL. I knew Mark first from NBA XL back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first knew about Mark as what he did. Him and Akil Augustine and Nicky Reyes. Big ups to all of them.
Of course.
So that was the first time I really got. But yeah, like that's where. But it's funny because either way, I don't think the younger generation, younger than all of us, understand that it wasn't easy getting black music in Canada in general 15, 20 years ago. That was on a Canadian station.
Folks, I'm just going to step away for a hot sec. So, Avery, if you'd like, please finish this off. Folks, I'll be right back. Of course, this is going to be the Avery and Troy segment for a hot minute. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, but yeah, we'll just wrap things up there on that. But yeah, no, the NHL schedule. I'm excited for those games are gonna be coming down. But Troy, I do ask one last question on that topic. What are your thoughts on the fact that the schedule release is going to be a 2-day event? 2 days for a schedule release. Oh, if Troy can hear me. Oh, Troy, you there? Oh, I think Troy might have frozen on us.
Oh, I hope Troy didn't dead off. So, well, I'll stay with y'all for a hot minute. What was your question?
There you go. Troy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I guess, yeah, Troy, yeah. Just what are your thoughts on the fact that this NHL schedule release is going to be a 2-day event?
Why? It doesn't need to be 2 days. It's not the draft. Just make like the NFL team and create, and pay somebody to think of something quote unquote creative to release on your social media platform. Nobody's sitting around for 2 days. Like nobody's taking days off.
Like, I just don't understand why. And the thing is that the NHL isn't at that point where, I mean, it's bad enough a 2-day event, but you are not that league that can have that and have people not say, "Oh, brother, get it over with." Maybe the NFL can do that, not the NHL. Just drop it all in one day. I know why they're doing it. They want to. Yeah, like they're doing it to have a day on ESPN and Sportsnet. Just simulcast 1 day of a scheduled release on both networks and call it a day. We don't need 2 separate shows for an audience in Canada and America. Why? Like, you simulcast the draft lottery on both networks. Just do it for your release show. You're getting too greedy now with this.
Yeah, like I get they're trying to get eyes on the sport, but like you were trying to draw eyes in the worst possible way. Like the least talked about event in the hockey calendar.
Right. I don't know. You're doing too much for a minor thing. Have your one night, drop it, move on. Let's get ready for training camps. It is silly. It is silly. And as we'll move on here, Dave has still stepped away. We'll go to our last topic of the night, and that is coming down to offer sheets. We are seeing them coming this summer. It was few and far between for many years, but now the Anaheim Ducks, after having a season in which, they were feeling good, they're rolling high, they knocked off Edmonton in round 1, the future looked bright, and then the Flyers said, "Hey, we're going to offer sheet Leo Carlson." And that whole summer got thrown for a heck of a loop in Anaheim. They messed up Also, too, by locking in AJ Greer to an absurd deal. Again, NHL GMs, why do you like making these silly moves to shoot yourselves in the feet again? Locking yourselves into AJ Greer? Pat Verbeek, what are you doing? And now he's had to match the offer sheet for Leo Carlsson. Oh, brother. If Anaheim regresses, he is as good as fired, Troy.
I bet you somewhere they've got the paperwork already drawn up. They're just waiting to press send. Because what do you mean? You matched it. They're not even in your conference, let alone your division. Like, don't get me wrong, Leo Carlsson, he's going to be a tremendous player. Like, his stats keep improving year after year, but there's no way he's on the same level as McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl, and all these guys who are making 12 million plus. There's no way, like, even Kaprizov? No, he's not on that level, not yet. But, yeah, to send him the offer sheet, and then for Anaheim to match, what are you guys doing? Like, does nobody in the room own a calculator? Like, you don't have nobody crunching numbers, saying that this is a bad idea? And then, like you said, handing all that money to AJ Greer, he's on the wrong side of 30 in NHL terms. He's on the wrong side of 30, so you're throwing a bunch of money at him, and then you've got the Gudas deal, where, I guess, depending on which way you want to look at it, it's kind of circumvented the cap by front-loading it. So then that way, by the time he retires, they owe him next to nothing. You know, it'll be interesting to see what kind of cap space Anaheim's left to work with and what kind of moves they still need to do. I think there are GMs around the league looking at this, also wondering what the hell is going on, and also wondering how can we fleece the Ducks GM to get our way, because something's not working management-wise in terms of matching and signing players, but who knows? We'll see. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out, just like everybody else.
The whole Carlson thing is that the fact that you got slow walked to July 1st on Carlson, and the Flyers say, you know what? Let's give it a shot. If I'm Leo Carlson, either way I get paid. It's a win-win for Carlson. Either way he's getting paid by either Anaheim or Philly. But the fact that the fact that Pat Verbeek didn't get anything done for Carlson before that offer sheet happened, what are you doing in that front office? What are you guys doing in Anaheim? That you are taking to that point in which the Flyers could say, you know what? Why not? Let's see what happens.
Somebody's getting fired!
Because didn't he have from July 1st of last year to negotiate with him and chose not to do anything until this year? I mean, like, it's one thing if him and his agent says, okay, we're not talking during the season because he wants to focus on his performance. But still, like, you don't want to have any kind of little talk, nothing on the side during the season, put something in his ear like, yo, we want to sign you for this, and that way you're not subjecting him to ludicrous offer sheets. Like Verbeek played his hands very, very badly. I would love to play poker with him because I'm sure I could win some money off him.
Again, somebody's getting fired. Watch.
No, this is absolutely, if you're Ducks ownership, this is, okay, Pat, you didn't want to get the Carlson deal done earlier, and you put your trust in this AJ Greer deal, and you extend him? Alright, if we don't have success again, it's your head.
Pretty much. Either way, this is going to be a very interesting situation. Maybe we'll see another mess up between, say, the Ducks and the Flyers, because there's already a player on the Ducks that Flyers fans hate with a burning passion. So this Leon Carlson situation is probably just going to add another layer to it. And, you know, hey, we're all for good hockey at this point, you know. Like, if one city hates another, even though they're like almost like 2,500 miles or say 3,000 kilometers away from each other. Like, hey, we're all for the bloodshed at this point, man. Like, any team that basically licks each other off to the point where it's like, oh, hey, the Leafs have an easier chance to go to the Cup final. I'm all for it. So, look, we're all hoping for the day that all Canadian final gives Gary Bettman a heart attack and maybe lops off the rest of his hair. But, you know, it is what it is.
Man, yeah, he'd be calling in all kinds of favors to make sure that Canada doesn't win.
Right? But I mean, you know it's eventually gonna happen at some point, right? Because it's like, I don't know how many American teams left can be able to cause problems enough to say, like, to continue the narrative that, like, oh, Canadian teams can't win in the NHL. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no! The Leafs and the Oilers go into the Stanley Cup final in 2027. I don't know. I'm just predicting. Let me rephrase that. I say that's not a prediction. That's probably a spoiler. Just saying.
Okay, so let me ask the both of you this. Based on the moves that we've seen so far, which Canadian team or teams do you think have the best chance of representing the country in the Stanley Cup final next year?
I mean, outside of Avery's bias of Edmonton, I don't think you can ignore what Toronto is doing right now. Cause like he's probably heard us and said, listen, I'm going to listen to those black dudes on third intermission and say, you know what, like at least, I'm going to actually do something just so I don't get bossed. I don't catch a death pause one time. But
doesn't want to be the butt end of put the price in the bag jokes from us.
Exactly, pretty much. But you can't really ignore what's happening, right? Because it's like the whole dynamic has changed within the Leafs. You signed Darren Radish, you signed some depth players, you have Sergei Bobrovsky as your new goaltender. Could this be the end of Stolarz in Toronto? We don't know. The Baby Leafs, of course, ended up winning the Calder Cup earlier this year. You know, some of those pieces could be coming onto the Leafs as depth pieces. Like, for example, William Villeneuve, Alex Nylander, Ben Danford, Mark Johnstone, of course, friend of the show who was just on the podcast last week. Arthur Ahmed, I can't even pronounce his last name. Arthur, right? Double A. There we go. Double A as well. Also being a goaltending prospect as we shift off Hildeby. Could Matthews be the perennial? Can Matthews be that player that he was when Mitch Marner was still in Toronto? Can Nylander step up? Is this the end of the road for Tavares? Are we going to see potential trade offers with Morgan Riley or Matthew Knies in that situation? Like, there's so many storylines with the Leafs, but you cannot deny the fact that like these guys have actually done their due diligence and they've done their homework this year. So I'm happy to see all this happen, but at the same point in time, you can't really ignore the fact that Toronto's been making money moves not only on the ice and off the ice as well, as of course the hire with Daniel Alfredsson. Of course, they did lose Mark Frazier and Haley Wickenheiser as, like, say, essential front office pieces. Brandon Purdom, of course, leaving the Leafs as well as the assistant GM. And now, of course, there's a new regime in the Leafs organization. So I gotta say it's Toronto. Avery, I'll throw that question to you.
You know, the audience may not like it, but the Montreal Canadiens are still there. The Habs are still there, the team that could make it to a cup final, y'all. That Montreal team is still young, still dynamic. You still have Demidov, you still have Suzuki. You still have a team that can make some noise in the Eastern Conference in Montreal. You still have Cole Caulfield as well, too.
Could we, in our lifetime, potentially see a Leafs Habs conference final.
Yeah.
Just for old time's sake.
It could happen.
And can Toronto actually... Oh, go ahead.
Right. For me to answer the question I posed, I am going to say Toronto as well and Montreal for the reasons that both of you listed. Those are the two teams that I feel have made the most progression towards trying to be better for the next coming season. Montreal, like Avery said, they locked up their young core pieces, including their goaltending, which serves them up for at least the next 3 years. And like you said, Cole Caulfield's still under contract, and it's a shame that Caulfield's not a Leaf, but whatever. I love that dude. It's a shame he's a Habs. If there's a team, this is my next question I'm assuming we're leaning towards wrapping this up. So I asked about teams that we think that were good, that made the best off-season moves, and that have the best chance of representing us. Is there any teams that you feel have regressed or didn't do enough to this point to improve? I'll start off. Somebody said Chicago?
Yeah, I said Chicago, because it's like, how are you going to go into the draft, basically dash off your first round pick? You have basically a chance to get a decent defenseman, and you basically lop off your pick to somebody else just to say, like, oh, we don't have shit in the first round, and then you have something to complain about to Gary Bettman, so you can at least get a first round pick next year. Like, how are you going to build around Connor Bedard if you don't have anything?
For me, I'm going, of the Canadian teams, I'm going to say Ottawa's probably regressed the most. But in terms of all the other teams, I am fully on board with Chicago. Because, like you said, what do you mean? You traded your only first round pick for Bowen Byram, who at best is your fourth best defenseman. You gave up a chance to significantly improve your roster, because I would say arguably any of the top 6 guys who went, any of them could have gone 1 through 4. You had probably one of the most at least the best players depth-wise drafted in recent memory. And you said, nah, I'm good. And then you find out a week later that Bedard's not even going to be ready for the season because he's out 4 to 6 months with his shoulder. I hope you know how to skate, bro, because you might have to pull on some pads and go do it with them. Because, what?
No, I fully agree. Avery, obviously, most sharply dressed man with hockey knowledge, obviously finish this off. Because I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was on them earlier. I'm going to remain on them. It's the Anaheim Ducks. Because again, in a division in which you have a chance to make a real move in this division, you have a real chance to be a team that could look to be could have been top 3 in your division again. You goof around, like I said earlier, and now you got San Jose coming up there. Edmonton made their moves. You had a great chance to do some damage, and again, I know I'm on the man, but Pat Verbeek, be so for real. Be so for real this offseason, dude. I'm serious. This is not the year to lose ground to San Jose in your state. I'm sorry. This is the wrong year to lose ground to San Jose. And yes, I know the Sharks have gone out. And yes, they bring in Darnell Nurse on that contract. Yes, I know they've attached themselves to Jacob Trouba, who isn't what he was and hasn't been for a hot minute. But that Sharks team still has Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith firing on all cylinders. And you go and you try to play 9D chess and fail? Brother.
It's like failing an open book test.
No, for real.
I'm sorry. Any Ducks fans? Actually, you know what? Ducks fans listening might agree with me. They might say, "Yeah, you're right. He goofed."
No, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Well, they can figure it out themselves, and we'll just leave it at that. And I think that's a good way to end off the episode. So, of course, we can't wait to see how this is going to play out. But until the schedule drops later this week, we'll see what happens. Avery and Troy, thank you very much for coming through. And of course, I want to thank you, the listener, and you, the viewer. You know, obviously, probably doing it simultaneously because we can't do these things without you. So, thank you very much for letting us space between your heads up. And we'll be back with another episode this week. Until next time, we know it's hot out there, so we're gonna say this extensively. Drink as much water as you can. Mind your business. Stay safe out there. Deuces.